Hello everybody, today I have a very special episode of KLL News, the second one. Today we will be talking about privacy tools recommending Ubuntu and why that is downright ignorant. I like Ubuntu. I actually use Ubuntu a lot. Ubuntu is possibly going to be the base of my own distribution, Eris Blue. Keyword possibly. Um, so as many might heard from Switch to Linux, PrivacyTools is now recommending Ubuntu, which I honestly feel is downright ignorant. I even have 5 pretty decent reasons why I feel this is just so ignorant, stupid, kind of dangerous. Because it is kind of dangerous. But we will get into the dangerous part in the conclusion of this video, and let's just talk about the main 5 reasonings why this is the worst decision they could have ever made. And first is their bullshit reasoning. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Their reasoning is pretty much just completely bullshit. Because according to Switch to Linux, the reasonings that they gave were good security record, decent QA, 6 months release cycle equals better, and more polished. My bad, polished. Actually, I would have much, 1, preferred it being more polished, and 2, I actually feel like it being more polished is even more true than it being polished. So let's talk about the reasons why real quick on why that is all BS. The first reasoning, good security record. Misleading at best. Because, well, yes, open source is generally much more secure than most closed source applications simply due to the amount of eyes able to fix bugs. Guess that's not really a good reason to select Ubuntu. Consider also that snaps exist, which we'll get to that in a little bit more detail in just a bit, but snaps. A closed source backend, which could be a security risk, because there's not that many eyes to see if they did something stupid. I have about as many IQs as there are items on my screen. I think there are 2. But let's take a minute to think. Closed source on an open source platform. A popular yet hated open source platform. A backend on an application type that is very much despised by some people, some of which I've known to be very willing to just go out of their way and create problems just to get it shut down. No, this isn't a good well, they have a good security record. There are security risks in Ubuntu currently. Thanks, Snap, for making my system less secure. Well, yeah, sure, they have decent security. But so does any open source platform, and arguably many others have better open source standards and security, including Red Hat, Enterprise Linux, and SUSE, Enterprise Linux. Open source platforms with proprietary sections that are more secure than Ubuntu by Canonical. Because Red Hat and SUSE aim for different markets, mostly enterprise markets, where Canonical's Ubuntu seems to be more of a community-ish project for Linux users. It's supposed to be for Linux desktop users and supposed to compete directly with Microsoft Windows. Let's think about that for a minute. If you're trying to think like, oh, but maybe they're doing it to fight, no. There's nothing you can take out of that that's actually good. Sure, maybe Canonical has some sort of plans to use this as a way because closed source always wins. It doesn't. It won't. But saying Canonical has a good security record, no, there are security risks at hand with using with Ubuntu, and that's not a deal breaker for everyone. Let's be honest. I use Ubuntu. I have accepted these security risks. Not everyone will, and I don't recommend putting it on a section called PrivacyTools and giving the security as a reasoning, because it's not a good one. The second thing that they gave was the stupid QA, also known as quality assurance. Let me ask you something. If you had a deadline for, let's say, a massive blockbuster, and that you actually cared about that project, but there was something going wrong, or the project didn't really meet the expectations you wanted it to, and just because it was delayed, but just because it wasn't delayed even longer, it sucked. It sucked ass. And people hated the movie that you worked so hard on for several years. Good Dinosaur is actually a good representation of the exact opposite of what Canonical's doing. Canonical is rushing these projects sometimes, often having very shaky test periods, and having a lot of their stability come from Debian. Yeah, they are going to still need Debian. Sure, Canonical puts in a lot of work, a lot of effort, and all that into their project, but a strict 6-month cycle, it's going to give you a little too much time in some cases, which can create mistakes. And in other cases, it gives you too little time, which causes mistakes. Sure, they've deleted in the past, but let's be honest, some of their decisions were short-sighted, to say the least. And then the 6-month the 6-month cycle stuff, sure, it works in some cases. For Canonical, it works perfectly. But as an ex-Remix developer, guess what was one of the main reasons I had to move towards an independent project? Maybe it had something to do with the 6-month cycle. You might never know. I hope people figure that out now. Anyways, 6-month cycle does create errors, and with many community projects like Ubuntu Cinnamon, Ubuntu DDE, and a bunch of others, they might not survive with a 6-month cycle, and they might be weeded out simply because they can't. Two examples of this are Ubuntu CDE and Ubuntu Lumina. I did Ubuntu Lumina and helped with Ubuntu CDE. Neither of us could really focus on the project because of school. So that hindered our ability to focus on the projects that we wanted to make. And considering that Joshua from Ubuntu Cinnamon is still in school, many OS developers like Farron OS Dev and probably others are actively doing school stuff, not being hindered for a great project. Actually, let's take Farron OS for a minute and think about this. Farron puts a lot of time and effort into his projects, yet he, as far as I remember, still goes to school. I think university. And then Joshua still goes to school. I don't know what, but he does that. And let's be honest. Joshua works really hard. And he has to follow a strict 6-month regiment. But wait a minute. What were the months they were releasing him again? October and April? 2 months firmly within the school year? Actually really close to really stressful times? October, especially because you're coming up on some of your semester finals being like assigned for especially bigger classes. Nah, no one's gonna do a distribution at that time. Eris Blue's probably not have a release until May when summer hits. Or later, after summer, because I would have finally had time to actually put in a lot of time and effort to focus on the project. FairNOS has the ability to release almost whenever he wants. And Joshua from Ubuntu Cinnamon doesn't. Rudra Saraswat from Ubuntu Unity, he's 10. He has school. How are you going to have a 10-year-old? And even though Rudra is a smart, amazing kid who probably has this planned out, how are you going to be 10 years old and follow... I don't know whether it's the same school system in India than it is in the United States, where I know where Joshua lives. And so do I. Well, fun fact. Let's say India, for some reason, just follows a similar school year to United States, in most cases. That means Rudra would have to focus on his project during some of the more stressful ones. And well, yes, he's in elementary? I think it was either elementary or just going into middle school. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's still stressful as frick. Really is. Because a project like this takes a lot of time and effort, and even though they have pre-built tools or systems already in place, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's better or that it's easier. Because they actually put time and passion into their projects. So, I mean, either way, if Joshua and Rudra get flavor status, which I freaking believe they deserve, they're going to be on a much stricter regimen for that. Because they have to release on time every time. And rushing might have to happen with some of the newer projects coming out. Or death. I just realized we spent 10 minutes on the first reasoning. On why this is BS. But I'm going to continue. 10 minutes of me rambling about three of the first means on the first reason this is a bunch of baloney. Because it is. More polished? No. Well, more polished, what does that mean? That it looks better? I can name a couple distributions that look a ton times better. Maybe bar like a default wallpaper or two, but they look so much better than Ubuntu. Okay, so what if they mean more polished as in no. Security and even stability? There's better. There are much better options, and... Oh, controversial statement here. I have seen Arch be more stable than Ubuntu, not Manjaro. I've not had Manjaro be stable on me, but that's to each their own. Arch can be more stable than Ubuntu can be at sometimes, and that infuriates me because it's supposed to be stable, but it's not. Lots of things crash. Usually for me, Firefox, apt. Yes, I've had apt crash on me, and no, it's not hilarious, it's not fun, it's irritating. I remember once, not too long ago, I tried on my other computer, installing the Monte desktop environment. And I cannot blame Monte, as I downloaded the same package on a virtual machine the same day, worked perfectly fine. I moved it to my other machine, my default machine, was unusable, couldn't use it. Every other desktop environment I had was perfectly fine and happy, except Luma to an extent, but that was still an Ubuntu issue, only available on that machine. Or other Ubuntu installs. The same packages do not work as good as on Ubuntu than Arch, than Debian. And that's irritating, because that's not how this is supposed to work, now is it? The Monte team did so good. I cannot call any part of Ubuntu polished. Oh, but it's so perfect and polished. It's the perfect Linux system. If it was perfect, then why are there major derivatives of Canonical's Ubuntu? Or why are there flavors and remixes in the first place if it was so perfect? All of them had to be made by the community. None of them are really considered additions of Ubuntu. They're flavors and remixes of Ubuntu. They are community respin, sometimes based by the Canonical team because, for one reason or another, maybe popular desktops and all that. Who cares? It's still a bunch of baloney to say Ubuntu's more polished. I can name several distributions that can beat Ubuntu in every single way to polish. Customizability? Arch. Usability and stability? Well, reusability will probably go to Pop! OS and Linux Mint. And stability easily goes to Debian, OpenSUSE, and Fedora. To an extent. Fedora is about as stable as Ubuntu, sometimes more stable. And I could name distributions that look better. Beepin, Pop! OS, Zorin. Linux Mint is more familiar. They have the most familiar desktop environment to a Linux user. Sure, you could consider KDE, but let's be honest here. KDE is back to the polished statement of stability. No, not that stable. I'm sure you can call the Ubuntu Cinnamon remix a representation of that. But that's not by Canonical. Even if it becomes an official recognized flavor, it's a community respin. And it can die. Okay. I think that's enough going on why the reasonings are a bunch of baloney bullshit. So let's go into number 2. Ubuntu collects data. We're not going to snaps just yet. Ubuntu itself, as a system, has previously and still does collect data. Some of it can even be traced back to you with the right know-how. Actually, I'm starting to stop wondering why they have their systems closed source. First off, you are opted in by default in the installer to, at least last I checked, by default, to opt in to a fingerprint. They have a lot of fingerprints on you. They have your fingerprints, not your actual ones, but your digital fingerprints. And while they don't collect, they're nowhere as bad as Windows 10, it's still bad. It's still bad enough to say that this decision was a bunch of terribleness. I trust Canonical with my data. That's why I use Ubuntu. I trust them with my data. I can absolutely say I can trust them. But not everyone will. And the fact that they collect it and putting on a site called PrivacyTools.io? No! That's an idiotic move. Yes, they collect data. I consent to them I consent to giving them my data. I'm fine with that. They can take whatever they want from me. Because I'm willing to trust them. I've been in a meeting with them with issues over the ad in the Ubuntu message of the day. Because I was upset and angry, and I actually got in an actual meeting thanks to a Canonical employee who saw my message. I got in a meeting with the team. I talked to them at about around 5 a.m. I was happy. They gave me fairly valid reasonings. And they also said they don't collect data with this, And these all being out of the words of Mark Shuttleworth himself. I trusted him with my data. I still trust him with my data. I don't think they're doing it for nefarious reasonings. But at the same time, data collection is data collection. You cannot turn that in any way, shape, or form. It is data collection. There's no way to spin that. Try, I dare you. Let's go, while we're on the subject of data collection, let's go into number 3. Snap. The single worst thing from Canonical, and actually something I've been debating on going with a meeting in myself. Because I don't trust snaps. I'll trust the Canonical team with everything else other than me downloading their snap package crap. First, there are applications in the Snap Package Manager that will and can collect your data. Oopsie daisies, didn't know that? 2, many applications from the apt repo are unreasonably forced as snaps. I don't like this, actually. I don't like how they force snaps. Especially with Chromium. I don't give 2 hoot and hollering craps if you have to build Chromium yourself. Because I'm 100% sure there's others in the community 100% willing to put Chromium into a package by themselves. And while yes, it might not be as updated as the rest of the world, fun fact, that's like the rest of the applications in like apt. You know that, right? Considering that this is a bunch of baloney. That PrivacyTools IO allowed system that forces a package manager that does collect data and is a preference preset in the terminals and all that in the application. One that collects data, one that is a security risk, one that has so many different issues that it's prompted an angry mob. No, I cannot see this happening. I cannot see this being serious. 4, there are better options. PrivacyTools IO put this in a section that is supposed to be easier for beginners. And if the other reasons weren't bad, this one's probably my second least. The next one's probably my least favorite situation. The better options. For security based around ease. Manjaro is easier. Sure, it's less stable, but it's a lot more secure and private. That's just fact. Pop! OS, a derivative of Ubuntu. More secure, more privacy-oriented, and much easier for beginner. Thank you again to the familiarity of... Well, no, that's just in general. The next one's for the familiarity, my bad. Linux Mint is the familiarity of Linux to Windows. Linux Mint is an inspiration to Eris Blue at times. Sure, I disagree with a lot of their actions, and a lot of their wording sometimes. I don't blame them, and sometimes they even convince me. But their desktop environment, no, looks a lot like Windows 10 and is fairly stable. Package management, pretty easy. Privacy, a main focus more than Canonical's Ubuntu. They don't collect any sort of data. They don't have data on you, unlike Canonical with Ubuntu. What's really infuriating me here is that Fedora and Ubuntu are pretty much alone from what I've seen in the Switch Linux video. Honestly, I'm disappointed. And if you believe, oh, but they're like, not ever collect data, they're good guys. Canonical good guys. Let's go into the last reasoning. This one's directed a question right at you, PrivacyTools.io, a site that I actually used. Do you not remember Amazon? Did you forget about Amazon? Are you wondering why is Amazon such an important point for me? For those who don't remember, prior to 2004, the latest release until the upcoming 20.10 release, There was an application in Ubuntu that collected your data to Amazon and sold it to Amazon. It was a selling point to Amazon. Canonical sacrificed their user base's information to Amazon for a while. Who's to say they're not going to do this again with another company? Who's to say Facebook might not get involved in a couple of years when they're back down on the radar? What about Google? Pretty sure Google could and would invest in Ubuntu. Actually, they do. Microsoft, that's a possibility. Like seriously, I'm baffled that they chose the operating system that had spyware built right in. That's what this part really gets me riled up. This part is really why this video is out. And why I've made this video. And why I'm actually not editing this video. Even with all my mistakes and silence points, I cannot say PrivacyTools really understands what they're doing. Sure, Canonical removed it. After years of hate. Years. That's not an excuse. Because they removed Amazon. I'm not putting them too high on a pedestal to think that they'll maybe try again to make profit. Remember, Canonical is a corporation. They are a corporation with people who have invested millions of dollars into the company. To a company owned by a man who went to space. The man who went to space is really cool, really nice, but going to space doesn't make you the best person in the world. And there is a reason I'm bringing this up. Fun fact, I actually have had friends defend Mark Shuttleworth's actions, all of them, even some more controversial situations. Amazon applications, Snap packages. My friends defend them, Mark, not just because he's a cool dude, because he is. He's really nice, really fun to talk to. But I've had people defend him because simply he went to space. Sure, is everyone going to have this mindset? But no, of course not. But remember that not everyone is not... It's not exactly the best way to say that this person's great. Because even the greatest of people can make mistakes multiple times, or even just not think they're mistakes. Will Canonical ever do that again? I don't know. It's hard to tell. No matter what anyone says, no matter what even I believe, expectations can be hard to follow. And who knows? Maybe the next person that pays them to put their application as a default in Ubuntu might collect data and see it great, and Canonical might not know. They're looking for money because they're a corporation. I don't fault them for that. This is nothing against Canonical. I have said multiple times throughout this video, I like Ubuntu. I like Canonical. They're cool people. I hate snaps, but I generally like the company behind the snaps. This is a problem with PrivacyTools.io. This is an angry rant about PrivacyTools because they made the mistake of saying, oh, yeah, we will trust Canonical to do all the privacy things. Canonical is looking to make a decent enough product, which they have, and make a profit off of it. Something they're passionate about, but at the same time, they need to make money. So it's unfair to say that Canonical is, no matter if they're so much better than Microsoft and Apple and Google and all of them, they're not the best. They've made mistakes, and I guess the best way to put this is there's better options in PrivacyTools. And sure, Ubuntu is a decent enough distribution to put on there. But I want to make it clear that I don't believe it should be on that list. Canonical Ubuntu, should it be on the best of all lists? No. Should it be at the best of usability, decent privacy, decent security, being better than Windows 10? Yeah, that's where they win. That's where they're trying to win. They're not trying to win in the absolute privacy sector. There's no need. And there's nothing wrong with them not wanting to dive into the deep end of the section that they're not fighting for. There's nothing wrong with what Canonical's doing sometimes. Sometimes there is wrong. And if they do wrong, I will talk about it. Because I've had great conversations with them. I know they listen. But the problem is putting them on a site for privacy dedication alongside Fedora and, as far as I can tell, nothing else. Sorry. I just can't see this happening. I can't see this being serious. Anyways, that was my rant. That was disguised as KLL News. See ya.